Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation in which we will explain the negative impact of using machine translation in data collection projects. The first question you should ask when translating data collection projects is, what is the goal of this project? And the answer is simple. Data collection translation projects aim to gather high-quality, human-generated translations to train and improve MT engines. These translations serve as a gold standard dataset, helping AI models learn language patterns, improve accuracy, and enhance fluency. As you can see, the main goal of this type of project and the use of MT engines as assistive tools are fundamentally incompatible. In other words, we cannot train a machine translation with machine translated content. Why is machine translation not allowed in data collection projects? Well, MT is an AI-driven process that automatically translates text without human involvement. Systems like Google Translate and DeepL use large datasets and neural networks to generate translations. While MT can be fast and cost-effective, it lacks accuracy, cultural nuance, and fluency, making it unsuitable for high-quality data collection. When MT is used in these projects, it compromises the dataset's quality, making it useless for the client and leading to significant losses. Since the client requires zero MT influence, we closely monitor translations for MT bias. We look for traces of machine translation in human-generated content. We will discuss our monitoring process later, but for now, it is worth mentioning that we use precise detection metrics to assess translation quality. These tools compare human translation with MT output, and a high similarity score raises a red flag. How can translators ensure high-quality translations? First of all, do not use automatic translation. Provide your own version of the translation. It is possible that you find the translation on the web, but it is totally prohibited to use the same translation and introduce small changes. That is what we call post-edition, and this is what we must avoid in data collection. You must provide your own version of the translation, your own translation from scratch. The primary rule in data collection translation is to ensure authentic human input. This is crucial for training and improving MT systems, and we explicitly state that MT usage is strictly prohibited. This is clearly mentioned in handoff emails, guidelines, our translation tools. You will see that the first time you open the file, the tool, you will see a message, a warning message. The onboarding email you receive from the supply chain team, the non-disclosure agreement you signed during onboarding. I will mention some linguistic and cultural consideration to avoid MT to avoid translations that may sound as MT biased. Even if a translator does not use MT directly, the translations may still resemble machine-generated output. And here are key aspects to keep in mind. Ensure fluency and readability. As a rule of thumb, translations must be accurate, linguistically correct, faithful in style and tone, fluent and natural. By fluent and natural, we understand a translation should not be too rigid or awkward. A natural translation may be flagged as MT influenced. Avoid excessive source language adherence. One reason translations resemble MT output is that translators stick too closely to the source, sacrificing fluency. Let's analyze some specific cases in which some translations may sound like empty biased. For example, in the case of idiomatic expressions, or what it is commonly known as or referred to as idioms. Idioms should not be translated literally, but instead, it is necessary to find a cultural equivalent or an adaptation that you can use in the translation in order to preserve the meaning and intention of the phrase. For example, to pull someone's leg is an English idiomatic expression which means to try to persuade someone to believe something that is not true as a joke. Is it really your car or are you pulling my leg? Translating this expression literally in this context into another language like Spanish, for example, would have no sense and would sound unnatural. When translated, it is necessary to find an equivalent of that idiomatic expression phrase. Another case can be with acronyms. If an acronym has a target language equivalent, use it instead of keeping the source version. Another option, in case there are no equivalent acronyms, is to translate translate acronyms to their full form. For example, in Arabic, it's not common for acronyms to be used, so you will probably avoid using the acronyms and translate to the full form. In Spanish, for example, the acronym for the United Nations is ONU or NU. So reading the acronym UN in relation to the institution in a translation into Spanish would be unnatural for the Spanish reader. Syntax and sentence structure. Where order varies across languages and following source structure too rigidly results in awkward, empty-like translations. Semantics and word choice. Avoid literal translations that do not fit the target language. For example, the expression in Spanish, no tengo ganas de hacer esto, would be in English, I don't want to do that. The word ganas in English, in this context, does not have an equivalent. So you need to provide the equivalent phrase. Conversational structures, words like or sure in English may not have direct equivalents in other languages. So adjust accordingly for natural flow. Cultural conventions follow target language formatting for number, dates, capitalization, and symbols unless the client specifies or shares other specific instructions. So how do we detect and handle empty usage? By monitoring translators' activity. When you open a file in our translation tool, you will see a pop-up message informing you that the activity will be monitored. The solution we use records the activity and suspicious behavior triggers alerts. If a file is flagged, we review recordings and conduct empty bias checks. We compare your translation, that is human translations, against multiple empty engines, including Google Translate, DeepL, OpenAI, Yandex, Microsoft, Amazon, among other engines. We generate empty bias reports before each delivery, and when we are flagged some suspicious activity, we generate these empty bias reports, even if no issues have been flagged, of course. We checked all files. And this is what we see. And as you can see here, there is a red score for DeepL engine, what suggests some bias towards this empty engine. The tool compares empty outputs from the various engines we mentioned. And if one engine shows a significant higher match, it suggests that engine influenced the translation. Of course, the result on its own is not an indication that the translator has used MT, but we we analyze the red flag translations to see if the translator's output is nearly identical to MT, and we analyze different parameters, not only the score in isolation. We try to answer questions like, could this segment be translated differently? Are there alternative phrasings? Are there several segments in the file showing this pattern, or is it an isolated case? Does this pattern appear across multiple files assigned to the same linguist? Is it the only file problematic that might be problematic for this linguist? So after we do some analysis of the problematic segments, we, as in the example you will see in the next slide, I will show you a report that belongs to the file we analyzed and we showed you before. The translator assigned to this file had other 7 files assigned to them, and all of them, the 8 files, showed high similarity to DeepL. In the image of the report I will show you in a moment, it is evident that translations had minor edits, mostly synonyms. Structure, order, phrasing remain totally unchanged, very long segments suggesting MT was used, and a very light post-editing was done. Look at the reports. Here you see the source, the machine translation output, and this is the human translation. All the words that are in red and crossed out are the words that the translator changed. The blue part is the edits are the edits introduced by the translator. As you can see here, there are red flags for these segments. These are only 2 segments, but there were many segments, very long segments with this pattern across 8 files, as I mentioned before. You see, there are very few changes in very long segments, which is really concerning because it seems that the translator has copied the MT output entirely and did a light post-editing. This is not what is expected. This is totally prohibited. So what happens if MT usage is confirmed? If our checks indicate potential MT bias, we will contact the translator first. We don't reach out to blame translators, but we reach out to address concerns and request a rework if needed until the expected quality is achieved. We request corrections. Of course, problematic segments must be redone entirely before delivery. High quality is expected from the very beginning, and it is the translator's responsibility to ensure all the requirements are met. In case rework of one or more segments is needed, be aware that any rework task is unpaid, as avoiding MT usage is a known requirement. So if you do the translation from scratch without using MT and taking into account all the aspects we analyze in relation to naturalness and fluency, there shouldn't be any issue. As a last resource, we will reassign the task if necessary. If the translator, the original translator, cannot redo what we are asking to redo or refuses to do what is needed, the task will be reassigned and the extra cost of retranslation will be deducted from the original translator's PO. Of course. Not using MT engines is the #1 requirement in data collection projects. Failure to meet this requirement results in useless data for the client, financial penalty for us, loss of future projects. And by providing high quality human generated translations, we maintain trust with our clients and secure ongoing work for our team. Thank you. Please reach out to us in case you have any questions.